vacation. Competent ones. Better?
She said,
Better candidates.
are you trying to take a shot at yourself?
That's what it sounds like. All right, let's start the meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, would the clerk take the roll call?
Councilmember Collings? Councilmember Stearns? Mayor Pro Tem Redmond is absent. Mayor Sackcliffe?
Here. All right, moving right along. We have no special presentations today, so we'll move right into public comment. We'll start with those in the audience here at the Upper Lodge. Anybody like to come up and speak? You have 3 minutes about subjects not on other agenda items.
Shasta.
Clerk, start the clock. Oh, them. All right, thank you. We have a few other people here. Would you like to come up and take 3 minutes to say something? State your name and where you reside.
My name's Cynthia Miller-Bowles. I live at 413 McLeod Avenue. And my primary concern or interest is with the notice I got regarding the restriction to parking on the south side of McLeod Avenue.
Okay, so is this going to be about the McLeod Avenue parking restrictions?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to address that at a particular agenda item, so hold your thoughts till that time, unless you have to go or something.
Well, I do have one other open concern. I
Okay,
haven't been to a meeting like this, and I appreciate your time. Thank
So
you so much.
the McLeod Avenue item will be discussed thoroughly later, so hold off on that. Do you have something else to talk about?
I do. I have 3 properties on Mill Street, and I'm having a little bit of concern with the ingress and egress of that road from the main drag, primarily with the red curbs. I've had a couple problems with getting out into traffic with especially cars at SJ Denham and along the way. I have 3 houses, so it's basically that whole length of block. It's very, very dangerous coming out, trying to get out, even if you want to go with the flow of traffic. And I've noticed that the red paint lines on pretty much every intersection in town are very eroded and probably need some updated paint for safety issues. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
City manager, take note of that? Okay. Go ahead.
If I can, there you go. Are people parking in the red zone area?
Yes. Yes, I
Because-
almost got in an accident the other day, which brought it to my notice.
Yes.
Because it's always been scary, but that particular time, I almost got T-boned.
Okay, so it's the fact that
They're actually
they're actually
in the
parking in the red zone area, and they don't know because it's so faded out.
Correct.
Thank you. Just want to make sure I understood.
Okay, well, thanks for that. That's actually a safety item that should concern us. Thank you very much. All right, we have, come on up. Name and place of residence. Please.
Greetings, Francis Mangels, live here within the city limits, Pine Ridge Drive. Okay. And comments is, I understand that people here are looking for an increase in salary, and I would advise that
Okay,
this-
so Francis, we're going to have that as an agenda item, and
Okay.
and those comments should be saved for that agenda item, if that's okay with you.
Okay. I
Yeah, so that'll be
Just want to
number-
say briefly, I think the pay should be in proportion to the population.
Okay, so that's our first item after consent agenda. Why don't you come back up then and expand on that?
And I wish to comment again, like I did the last time, and there seems to be no action. If we have a great many trees in this city that are in danger of falling over power lines, you know, a white fir is not exactly what you call the most stable tree in the forest, not to mention cedars. These trees, there are several right there between Terryland and Shasta, that if they go down, they're either going to take out a house or take out a power line, depending on which direction they fall. If they fall south, they're going to kill somebody and take out some permanently occupied dwellings. If they fall north or east, they'll take out all the power on Pine Ridge Avenue and all the power on Shasta Avenue. And I think this is a very bad idea to just let people go, I won't be here when it does, or something like that. And so falling on power lines. The other one, I've said several times, you got a lot of firebomb trees right here in town. There's somebody that's heard that line before. And when you have these cupressaceae, reed, cedar, juniper, sequoia type trees, all it takes is somebody to smoke or a kid playing with a match, and these trees go up like torches. I've been in the Forest Service fighting fires for 35 years, and that's not the place where you put your camp is in these kind of trees. And you've got lots of them in the city limits, lots of them under power lines, lots of them just outside the city limits by 50 feet where the city power lines are. And these things are going to blow up one of these days and take things out. And they are especially bad on the north and east side of town. We got a freeway for a fire break otherwise. The other thing, look at the East Ridge here in town, whatever the name of it is, and about half the trees are dead from scolitis beetle, and hell's going to break loose one of these times if the fire gets loose on that ridge.
All right, as always.
Have fun.
Thank you for your insights on that. We appreciate it. And we have one other person that may want to speak, but that's it? Okay. To the Zoom people.
There's no hands raised.
No hands raised. So we will close the public comment section of this agenda at this time and move on to number 5, council and staff comments. As usual, we'll start with the city manager.
Okay, so I got an email from the deputy county administrator this morning stating that she got word from the board of supervisors that they want to hear the EIFD item tomorrow morning. And so, okay, be up there, and Joe changed his schedule around to be up there as well. What's also on the agenda is the Upton Highlands mudslide, and I've got Ken Kellogg coming up to speak about, the issues and not, the goal isn't to beat the county over the head. It's like, how do we work together to, seek grant funds, to make sure that our infrastructure is protected, because unless we do something like rechannelization, or the county does something like rechannelization of that mudslide area, we are going to have more impacts to our infrastructure. And for the folks that are in the county and Upton Highlands, I mean, it's an awful situation. So on to the well negotiations. I sat down with the owner. He is willing to cede the tank site to us as well as the easement. He is under the impression that the well rights are something not to be given away. He's willing to give us what we need for water, but he wanted to hold on to a portion of them for, I'm not really sure what. He just feels like he's been told not to give it up. And I think he's conflating well rights with water rights. And what I did is offered him a couple hours with one of the top water rights attorneys out of Sacramento to understand what he can do and what he can't do. And so we're trying to work through that sticky part of the negotiations and see what we can do. One of the neglected items has been the library, and the Friends of the Library are running it. They're running it very well, very experienced. They want to continue to run it for the time being until either they hire a business manager or a library director, and they wanted an MOU with the city outlining, what they can and can't do in detail. And when I talked to John Kenny, the city attorney, he felt it would be better if we put kind of vague parameters around it and in the form of a charter and bring it to council and say, you can do these things within the bounds of the tax dollars that are brought in for the library, and, ultimately, so you can hire a plumber, so you can fix things that break. You can, change, certain light fixtures that they want done, go out and seek additional help if they need to, as long as it fits under the parameters of what they pull in each year under the library tax. So I'm working on that with John Kenny. And there's you guys know, there's a bunch of other stuff, but it's probably not baked enough for me to talk about right now. So that's what I've got. I'm going to turn it over to Muriel to let her walk through the budget.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I can report that the Finance Department is caught up with the accounting through November. I have reported to you in the investment report the revenue that's been earned through November. Sales tax, just for other folks to know, is up about 11.73%. Transient occupancy tax is up about 19% over the prior year. I'm willing to answer any questions you may have regarding that or things that you may be concerned about.
Council members, questions? No. Okay. Yep.
I pulled it out just to make note of it, so thank you for that. That's good news.
All right, so it's very surprising revenue numbers in that they're actually outpacing inflation, so that's a very good thing. And I'm not surprised because I'm actually dealing with the businesses weekly, and it was very busy this summer. So in that regard, it wasn't a surprise. This is not a surprise. It's, I guess, more a matter of degree. So it's a very positive thing. I have to say, though, there has been a drop-off in business activity in this town starting somewhere in late October. So we shall see if we have similar pace come the December 31st report, or the report on December 31st for the second quarter. Hopefully it's okay. So my only other question would be, when will we have final numbers on fiscal 23?
I'm not sure when our auditor is coming out to do field work. He has the information at this point. It's just a matter of fitting it into his schedule. So it's all ready to go. Once he does, it goes very quickly.
Thank you, Muriel. I was going to comment on the same numbers that Muriel mentioned, so I really don't have anything to add at this point. Fellow council members, would you like to comment on other things?
To the chair?
Yep.
Last week, Chief Gibson and I met with the high school superintendent, high school principal, and select members of each school's school board to discuss the possibility of partnering up to add a full-time officer to patrol on campuses for safety reasons following the incident that happened a couple months ago. And overall was, I think, a very positive conversation. I'll let Chief go over the incidentals if now's a good time for that. But he had a great presentation, and I think everyone is on board with safety first right now and moving forward with a solution that could benefit the entire community.
Go ahead, Chief.
So essentially, what we're looking at is funding, a 50-50 split between the schools funding partial officer position with the city matching. We covered what that cost would look like, and I presented what currently is going on in Wairika City between the high school and their middle school, where they fund 2/3 of the officer position, and I was able to get both the positive and then negative for the year that it's been and present that to the board members and staff. And we clarified some misnomers and misconceptions about what an actual resource officer is. Although they are a sworn police officer, they're actually specially trained, and they receive special training both state and nationally on how to be more of a mentor and fostering presence to children versus the police officer out in the street. It's also made it clear that their job is not to supplant the disciplinary actions of the school. That is still 100% in the school, and the officer does not do disciplinary actions. So they're taking those back to the board. We should have another meeting in January to see if that is something their boards are wanting to proceed with, and where the funding is going to come from.
Thank you, Chief. Gentleman to my left, any comments at this point? No. Okay, thanks. Me, neither, so we will move on to comments on committee updates from city manager. Anything?
Nothing.
To the chair.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
There are some minutes in with the consent agenda from those departments.
I'm sorry, one more time?
Yeah, so there are minutes. Do you have anything that you need to enlighten us on regarding the minutes on the two different committees? We have one from beautification and one from DIAC, I believe. Yeah, number F.
So beautification, I typically am not in attendance with that, so I'm not sure what's going on there. The DIAC, we have had to, besides what I spoke about at, the last scheduled DIAC meeting, which I spoke about at the last council meeting, we've had two special meetings where it was just the group on their own to meet to talk about the details of where they're going to get lights, who's going to untangle what, and that kind of thing. But not something that they really wanted me to get involved in, other than if they had a question, they would yell to me.
All right, well, I guess if we want to talk more about DIAC and beautification, we can maybe mention that as an agenda item, potential agenda item for the future. And maybe before that, talk about them in our goal setting. As an example, DIAC has, well, there's two different things, but DIAC has a beautification type of a goal of doing utility boxes, and we can maybe look at whether there's funding for that, and maybe there's some way to.
Past is not necessarily prologue, but we have in the past asked committees to come to council at least once a year to give us an update. So that's one way of having some communication.
So we'll maybe make that an agenda item, but certainly talk about that at our goal setting. Okay.
I think they'd be thrilled. I mean, if you want me to reiterate, because I think it's still, applicable. What I brought up at the last council meeting, I can fill you in on where the DIAC is. They're really a great group, and they're really kicking butt. I mean, they're tremendous asset and real go-getters. So as you see, Powerbox art, some of it's up. They have a current contest that they're running, that they're looking for applicants from local schools to put in their own Powerbox art, and with bragging rights that would come with it if your design is picked. And there's a contract that I put together with them, outlining what we can have and what we can't have, objectionable material, they can't, that kind of thing. They are working on small grants for facade improvements, and they're working up, a basic application for that, small grants of like, $500 to $1,000 that would come out of their allocation for the year. And, they're working hard on the Winter Magic Parade and trying to get that. I don't know, I haven't heard the latest, but the big thing has been, how do you lay that large pedestal down for the Flower of Life statue without cracking it? And that's been an issue. And so last time I knew they were working on it, that a forklift would probably be couldn't take the load. So they're still working on that as far as I know, unless people have seen it in place. But great group, can't say enough about them.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda, item number 7. Is there any item that council members want to pull? Oh, it is pretty straightforward. All right, so City manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, November 27th, 2023, regular meeting. B, approval of disbursements, accounts payable, November 8th, 15th, 20th, and 30th of 2023. Total gross payroll and taxes for periods ending November 12th and November 26th, 2023. C, monthly investment and financial report for the period ending November 30th, 2023. D, police department monthly report for November 2023. E, approval of 2024 meeting schedule for council, commission, planning commission, I believe, committees, and city council pre-agenda meeting schedule. F, committee minutes, beautification committee August and October meetings 2023, downtown enhancement advisory committee meeting for November 2023. Somebody please move.
Move to approve consent agenda items A through F.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. And we move on to item number 8, discussion and possible action for proposed city council compensation changes to attract quality city council candidates. And the report on this will come from the city manager.
Okay, so this agenda item came up via Councilperson Clure. I believe you were attending a League of Cities conference where they were talking about ways to attract, busy professionals or other people with special expertise to serve on councils. And there were two approaches that I was asked to look at. One of them was the potential to pay the health insurance of council members. And Muriel, please correct me if I get the verbiage wrong on this, but Muriel made some calls to the Teamsters about whether or not we can open the plan that we have in agreement on in terms of our citywide health insurance. And they said they weren't able to do it, that if we were going to provide insurance for council members, it would have to be at market rate, as if you were going out as an individual citizen and seeking your own insurance plan. So the next is, right now, council is compensated at $220 a month for their time and their service. And a recent Senate bill passed over the summer that raised the maximum rate that council members can be compensated from $320 a month for cities under 35,000 people to $950 a month with no more than a 5% annual escalator. And we're here tonight for our council to discuss whether there should be an increase in council compensation, and if so, how much?
Okay, so let's try to be real strict about our format. At this point, council members are supposed to ask questions for clarification purposes, then we go to public comment, then we'll have our discussion and give direction, if any. So, clarification questions. Go ahead, Tim.
Todd, in terms of the recent legislation, does that change what previously existed? What previously existed was the compensation could not increase more than 5% per year.
That's the same. The only thing.
So it would be, and what we had done in the past when we raised, I think from $60 a month or whatever it happened to be way back, times past, is we took the number of years and then calculated the 5% and raised it to the allowable level. I think that's still the situation that we would go through. It would not be automatically set at some higher number and then in the future a 5% raise from there. Is that correct?
It's not part of what passed this summer, but if that has been the standard procedure here, then we can certainly follow that. The newest legislation passed this summer allows up to a 5% increase per council member per year. But if you guys have had something that's worked for you, then why?
I think I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
For clarification,
Sorry.
it could be 5% per year per council member without having to go to a vote. Is that an automatic increase, like the state legislature does something like that, I think?
If that's what council chooses to do, there is something in the legislation that says that a city legislative body can go to the voters to see where they want this to be and whether they approve this increase, but it's not necessary.
Thank you. I think what the question was can we leapfrog without a 5% increase to a new amount and then do the 5% after?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And you can forgo it. You're able to mix and match that.
Okay. And then my second question is can you repeat the amounts?
Is a maximum of $950.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Collins? Yes.
City Manager, when whoever it was that was talking to the union about insurance costs and potentially having a benefit for insurance, was there any cost per year, per counselor associated with, well, what would it cost to do that?
Muriel, did they give you a number, or did they just say it was, you're on your own?
It's not available through the Teamsters.
So
It
we'd
is
have to go
not
out on the
ava- it is
right.
not
So we'd
available.
have to go out on the open market.
So we'd have to go out.
You'd have to look on the open market to figure
Got
out
it.
what those
What the
types
best
of
deal
costs
is.
would be.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Well, that's my question. Do we have any idea about how much that would cost?
No.
Because I think it's a lot.
Well, it varies greatly depending on your deductible. If you have if it's a catastrophic type of health plan that you sign up for, the monthly premiums are lower, but your out-of-pocket costs are
Or you have a whole
enormous.
lot of kids like myself.
Yeah, so
Or
then
if you've got
you want a
pre-existing conditions.
Cadillac plan like what the Teamsters offer to UPS, it's going to be over $2,000 a month, about more, maybe $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah.
As an individual, and freestanding, so it varies basically.
To the chair, if I can help to elaborate on that. We were going around about whether to do health insurance as the initiative or the increase in stipend. And I think we all landed on if we do a stipend, then it's up to the council member to use that towards health insurance if they so choose, and it makes it a little easier.
All right, so clarifying questions I think have been answered, and we'll move on to public comment. We'll start with the audience here at the hall. And Francis has left. Oh, well, that's the way it goes. Anyone else? Sure, come on up. Yep. And yes, name and location again, if you could.
Again, first time I've been to a meeting, curiosity overcomes. So is this something that the public votes on, or is this something that just kind of gets adopted by the council?
Well,
Okay.
I'll just answer the question. It could be either. We could,
Okay, I heard that you could bring it upon
we
the
could
people,
either vote
or you
ourselves a
cannot.
raise, or we could
Interesting. When
opt to
was-
put it up
When
to
was the
vote.
last time you had a raise?
From what I remember, way back in 2016, 2017, and it was small.
Okay. And about average, how many hours do y'all participate in city
We'll
council?
discuss that probably.
And that varies too.
Yeah.
Greatly. Yeah.
So are any of you full-time?
Oh no, it's not full time. It's just that if you have ad hoc committee assignments, meetings that you go to, related
So
to.
depending on what you all do,
Yeah.
it would be like across the board. If you decided to raise it $900, it's for everyone depending on whether they work 20 hours or 2 hours?
I might want there to be an option for people to take less, but
Sure. Well, appreciate your service for sure. What was my other question? Yeah, as far as the healthcare goes, it just, as being a healthcare provider, that just seems like that just isn't even an option if you're not like a full-time employee. But I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, we do have one hand raised. It's iPhone Joyce.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to have found out about this increase. I took a look at other cities all over the state, and the majority of them have volunteers that have excellent skills, excellent backgrounds, and they do not take a salary. Their thinking is, I would like to do this for my town as a volunteer, and I do not expect to be paid for this. That's, I think, what we need to look at is to look for qualified city council members that don't have a problem not being paid, that don't have a problem volunteering their services on a part-time basis. I think that this increase in compensation is just outrageous. I mean, really, you know, I know when I moved here, the reason I moved here was because of the affordability. I looked at all the costs and I thought this is a great place to buy a home and retire. Well, I was about 12 years ago granted. At that time and for a number of years after that, I don't know how many years, my city service bill was $35. My city service bill is now running close to $150 a month. And I tried to look up and see what the percentage of retired people, what that percentage is here in Mount Shasta. Because a lot of people, most people that retire, that want to live here, they're on a fixed income. Now, some aren't, some have plenty of extra money to spend, but there's a lot of us that are on a fixed income. And, you know, this increase that you're talking about, I mean, how much is that going to increase our city's services bill? I mean, it's just getting to be astronomical. Another good thing about having volunteers that work part-time, that volunteer their services for the city, and I think Vicki Knowles presented a list of at least 15 different, where the city council members do not, hello, can you hear me?
yeah, need to wrap up real quickly. Your 3 minutes is up.
I will, real quick. Vicki Knowles, I presented to you a list of over 15 towns where the city council members don't get paid. They volunteer their services, they have excellent backgrounds, and if they're volunteers and they're not getting paid, then they have personal insurance which covers them. They don't need to be covered by the city.
All right, thank you, Joyce, appreciate it.
Okay, and it needs to go to a vote, people.
All right, yes, thank you.
Our next speaker is Rosalind McCoy.
Okay, Rosalind, you know the routine, go ahead.
Hello, you can hear me?
Yep, name and living location.
I live in Mount Shasta. You see my name, Rosalind McCoy. So I remember just a few months ago that there was issues that we we're having a struggle with our budget. And do we really have what we're talking about, an extra $57,000 to give you each $950 a month? That's really, I think, over the top and raising it far more than what our town can afford right now. And it is really encouraging when the public comes to speak to you all and you're sitting there playing on your phones. That really shows how engaged you are with the comments from the community, and we're supposed to give you even more money. And I see in the background of it that it was stated that it was back in the 80s that there was an increase, and I'm glad that it was corrected and it was more, 2015 or so, there was a significant increase, a double, and everyone on city council said that they were not doing this for the money, they were doing this for the community. And to have people stand up now and say, oh, well, we got to have more money because the people that sit on our city council are not quality. I have seen a majority of you with quality. And, well, thank you to you that are actually paying attention and hearing my words and have put it before the people. Let the people vote on this. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rosalind. Anyone else?
Our next speaker is Johanna.
Okay, Johanna, name and town?
Yeah, Johanna, Mount Shasta. So I'd first like to just say, I think any raises or anything in terms of compensation should be brought to the voters. The voters vote on the city council, and it seems to me that if the voters vote you in, they should vote on any remuneration that you receive. Now, regarding healthcare at companies is generally reserved for full-time employees. Full-time being defined as 32 hours or more in a week. And I would probably say I would not be in favor of any health care because that doesn't seem to follow the norm guidelines in that area. In terms of compensation, although I do believe, I think everyone is doing it for a higher purpose and not for the money, I do think, it takes time, it's a lot of work, and, people deserve to be compensated to some extent for what they're providing to the city. And so, a small bump seems to be reasonable, but it seems like the increase is more than is normal for comparable cities in our area, in our rural kind of area. And the other question I have on compensation is this, I think the other speaker covered this to some extent, but is this sustainable? I mean, back in 2019, we were facing departmental policing and fire department consolidations with other towns, and we were facing serious budgetary shortfalls, and right now we're getting a lot of grants, which is wonderful, but I think the city council and the city needs to look at, is this sustainable in the future? If we don't have any grants at all, are we going to be able to afford this? Are we digging ourselves into a hole? So those are just some things to consider. And I believe SB 329, one of the main reasons for SB 329 was to include diversity. And I don't think we've received any new candidates in the new, slate. No one popped up. So I'm not sure, and there is already a compensation factor. Anyway, my time's running out, but those are kind of my thoughts. So
Thank you, Johanna. Do we have anyone left?
Our next speaker is Vicki Gold.
Vicki, name and town, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Gold, Mount Shasta. And I agree that if it's going to be more than the 5%, which I was unaware that that was always a standard practice previously, as Tim said, I'd like to know what that would be. If I know Muriel could probably do a quick figure of what that would be if you went retro to the previous, if it's 8 years or 9 years, what the salaries would be. I think it certainly is a big job. And I know that it's not just the hours that you're putting in sitting in the city council. There are many meetings, those that you discuss, those that are you are not compensated for, like going to the schools and having your special subcommittee meetings. I know it's a big job and it's very appreciated. I do think when I saw the list that was presented showing that if you raise to the $950, we would be way out of off the chart by comparison with other cities in this county, which we already are. I don't think a zero compensation is appropriate, as is apparently the case in Etna and Fort Jones and Dunsmuir. But I do think that raising it to that level would be a big mistake, and certainly it should go before the public if it's going to be that kind of a raise. I hope you will let us know what that would be, if there could be some quick calculations as to what the 5% increase would be at this point by 2024, let's say. And I very much appreciate everybody who's commented about it. Thank you.
Well, to answer that question, if our last raise brought us to $200 and something in 2017, and it's 5% escalator from there, it's about 6 years, so it's 30%. 30% nominally is about $67, but that's not how it would work. It'd be 5%, including the increase each year. So let's just say approximately $80. So you'd go from 225-ish, I think, is what it is. I don't.
220, yeah.
It's 220. So it'd be $300. Right. Let's just say that would be the retro calculate. We wouldn't get paid retroactively, but the bump up would be retroactive with respect to the percentage increase. So the 5 years, 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%, 30%. So get to $300 a month. That answers that question, approximately. We could calculate it a little bit more accurately. That's where you sit there and say 220 times 5%, that new number times 5%, et cetera, and end up at a more exact number. But I think it's going to be approximately $300. So anyhow, that answers that question with respect to the 5% increase. So time for council discussion. I'll close public comment at this point on this item. And so let's open up the discussion amongst us councilors. I have some extreme thoughts on this, so I'm going to wait till later. Go ahead, Tim.
All right. Well, I have some thoughts about this, which I've had for some time, and I don't have a pony in the race because I'm not going to be running again, won't be on city council after next November. But I do have a couple of decades of perspective. The people that we've had for the most part on city council in the past have either been business owners or retirees who did not need to help support a family. We have, for a number of years, said that we want to attract younger families and individuals into Mount Shasta. And I think that's positive. And if we want those people to be active in the community and have an opportunity to serve on city council, we have to recognize that this position is not a for-profit position. We all are doing this for service, hopefully, and I think that's been true for the past couple of decades. And at the same time, our time and effort does have value to ourselves, to our families, and to the community. The city council is the lowest part of the city budget. We recognize we pay other staff members for their time and efforts, and we value their contributions. We, over the years, went from a all-volunteer fire department to recognizing it got harder and harder to have volunteers for the fire department, and so we started paying, and now we pay a number of individuals' salaries in the fire department. What we have found, or it's been my observation anyway, that over the years it has been very difficult to find people willing to run for city council. Now, I've heard some people say, I wouldn't sit on city council for all the money in the world. I don't need that aggravation. But I've heard other people say, it's just not worth it. I know from my experience, I have sometimes put in 10 hours a week. Sometimes I put in 20 hours a week. Sometimes I put in more than 20 hours a week, where it seemed like city council was the full-time job and my law practice was a part-time job. That's not all the time. That's not every week, but I would imagine that if I were to average out over the years, 10 hours would be minimum, and 20 hours might have been closer to what I put in on an average. So when we make $220 an hour, when we have a salary of $220 per month, it's actually less than 1 hour of my hourly rate for my law practice. It comes out to less than minimum wage in California now. I do think that we have to increase it, the salary, to something higher than $300 a month. I think, from my perspective, something $500 or perhaps more than $500 a month is really needed to enable people who have families to consider the time away from families, the expenses involved in being on city council, the time involved in city council, to seriously consider serving the community in this capacity. And again, this is not, I'm saying this from a position of I'm not going to get any increase. I have in the past, when the city had very tight budget, there were at least a couple of us city council members who donated our salaries back to the city because we figured the city needed the money more than we did. But even then, there were some city council members who felt that they could not afford to do that. So that's my historical perspective, and I would not be supportive of jumping up to $950 a month, but I think finding a middle ground that might make a difference to people who would like to serve but feel like they really can't afford to serve the city.
So what are your thoughts on it being put to the voters?
Pardon?
What are your thoughts on it being put to the voters versus us basically giving ourselves a raise? You have any thoughts on that? 'Cause that's come up several times here.
That can be, whether the city council were to adopt it or put it to the voters, I think as long as, if it's going to be put to the voters, I'd say put it to the voters on a regularly scheduled election time to minimize the cost of adding that onto the agenda. I think if the city council were to adopt an increase for council members, it might be looked upon negatively, but I think if the community understood the reasons and the circumstances, that they might be supportive of the council taking the action without spending all the extra thousands of dollars of putting it on the ballot.
To put it on a ballot on a regular scheduled ballot is very inexpensive. I believe it's under $3,000, right?
Yeah.
Maybe less, like way under.
I thought it was 2,500, but I'm not.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it is,
Okay.
it's inexpensive. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
I started on city council in 2012. Let me start with the end in mind. I would not be in favor of any increase whatsoever. Nobody does this job for the money. I figured out during the slow times, I average about 30 hours a month, average about 50 hours a month. If it's Crystal Geyser time or it's cannabis regulations time, more like 200 hours a month. If it's 50 hours a month, which is about average, I'm making $4 an hour. You're not doing this job for the money. The total salary of the city council is about 1/5 of 1% of the general fund, the annual general fund. We're irrelevant. It's about $12,000, $12,050, $500. That's still $12,000, but to Tim's point, we shouldn't lose money because we travel to meetings, we do a lot of things that cost us money to physically do the job. This is public service. I think we have at least 20-year history in our United States Congress of pretty good evidence that the more you increase the money to the payment of your representatives, the greater the likelihood that they will be representing their interests instead of the people's. And for me, it's just a real simple equation. No raise at all. And then we get back to, for me, and just my perspective on this, what problem are we trying to fix? If we're trying to raise it from whatever the raise is, by law we can't go above 950, and I don't think we can go above, we'd have to put it to the people to go above roughly 300 for the 5%, which is the annual cap. Is that correct? I mean, like, we can't just vote it to 550 because that's...
No, we could just go to 950 next month. That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah, I mean, there would have to be an ordinance brought back, and you know, we'd have to have the readings, and then it would go into effect 60 days after that.
Okay, well, maybe that kind of sort of makes the point I'm trying to make, which is, if we're trying to attract people, I'm not sure having more money is going to attract the kind of people that, I mean, just speaking as my individual votes, that I would want to have. I want public service. And I guess that's where I'll just stop here at the moment and go, just to be clear, my vote is for no change at all.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Tessa?
Okay, so I brought this up with the thought of the upcoming election and how to get a better representation of our community and those in the business community specifically. I am the only one up here with a full-time job and 3 little kids in school and not even in school. And I do it because I'm a glutton for punishment and because I love doing this. However, like someone said, a lot of people would not like this job because of the demand, but I think mostly because of the demand that takes you away from what makes you money and what happens in the evening with your families. I would also like to mimic that, especially during the mayor and mayor pro tem years, I average about 20 to 30 hours a week with phone calls, with meetings, with research, with all of it to make sure that I'm as prepared as possible. We got an email today saying that we're only doing 2-hour meetings every other week, and that's just not the case. We put in a lot of time for what we do. And we do it because we love our community, and we don't do it for the money. Now, with that being said, my fear is sustainability, as one of the speakers said. Is it sustainable? I don't think we will have people running for council based on our volunteer group for much longer unless we give them an incentive to come. Unless we say, yes, it'll be a few hours away from your kids, but this is going to make it a little less burdensome on you. Right now, the $200 a month pretty much covers gas money to get from here and there. I've been in this volunteer community for, I don't know, 15 to 20 years of volunteerism, and the pool of people is not big. You see the same volunteers year after year, and we need a way to sweeten the pot to get the people that know numbers, know budgets, know how businesses work, how to manage people, how to help, how to on and on. And even if we were to go the full $950, which I don't know that I'll be in support of the full amount, but even if we're averaging even 10 hours a week, that's $10 an hour. So again, it's not for the money. That's where I will stop.
All right, so before I get to my extreme position, I'll just say...
I can't wait to hear what this is.
Oh, we should get paid at $950, but major strings attached. Okay, so anyhow, I guess at this current moment, I would be in favor of signing off on a pay increase along the lines of the $300 a month. I mean, basically, that's an inflator, escalator type of adjustment. I could live with that decision. I think it's fair. I think to the point of actual hours worked and what the actual hourly compensation is for that work, it's under $10 an hour in most cases, in most weeks, most months. There's responding to emails, there's phone calling, there's extra just little meetings all the time. Then there's these things we volunteer to do, like I do with the Collier Interpretive Center. And that's time and lots of gas money, actually, like going to Tule Lake. So as far as just voting ourselves a raise, I guess I can live with going to $300 a month right now. I think that's fair. And yeah, that's not much money and will make very little difference to the city budget. But more interesting possibility is to go to the $950 in an attempt to actually wake people up and get them interested in running for city council because they think they can make a difference, and maybe the compensation would justify their time and annoyance of coming here and working for the city. I think that the city protocols that we worked on where we cut people, I guess we did it there, we cut people out of these, the liaison position to the committees. I think that's failed. I think that actually has to be reinstated to actually help those committees get things done. There were reasons why we did that in the past. To the extent that it's legal by state statute, I think part of the duties will be to be in that, to recreate that liaison position and to be on it, and that means more hours working and hopefully facilitating actual completion of tasks and projects by those committees, whereas now they sort of linger in for a long time, whether it's getting garbage cans purchased or getting utility boxes fixed or deciding what to do with the library, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think the workload should be increased for the 950. That's somewhat extreme, I think, but I think it should be more clear. I think if we were to write up code, it should be more clear what exactly the duties are for each member, the minimum duties, and potential additional duties. And since it's a large increase, I do think it should go to the voters. And lastly, somewhat extreme, although for California we have term limits, we don't here in Mount Shasta. I think there should be a 2-term limit that should be voted on by the people also. So essentially, you work hard for 4 to 8 years, and you get paid a little bit of money to do that. I think that is my somewhat more extreme, I think certainly more extreme than anybody has voiced here, including staff and audience. In other words, we're gonna make a big jump, but you gotta work hard, and it's limited to 4 to 8 years, unless you quit, of course. Some people might when they find out how much work there is actually involved, and that 950 is not really worth that even. So that's where I stand. 300 is okay, we can vote that in ourselves. Give direction to staff to write up code to do that, or actually put it in front of the voters for November and see if people are interested in saying yes to semi-professionalizing the city council position. It would be a step from a volunteer type of position as it is now to a semi-professional position. For instance, it would be part of the requirements would be that you have to go to those meetings to learn how to be a city council member, just an example, which I did, and that took a lot of time.
And?
Yeah.
And did you learn something?
I did, yeah, and what I learned was that you have many, many things you have to worry about, details that have very steep downside, so you better be careful all the time, what you say and what you write. That was the main takeaway. So sort of, that was shoved in our face every hour, on the hour, it seemed like. But anyhow, there were other technicalities that were learned. But yes, it was definitely a necessary thing, I thought. And, but that was 3 days. So that's a lot of hours. There was, I think, some compensation for the gas. I can't remember.
You just get a reimbursement.
Yeah.
It's just reimbursement for hotel and travel.
Okay, so so I kind of have this sort of keep things the way they are with a little pay increase versus somewhat radical change to let the voters approve or not. I don't really think the 4 or 5 of us should make that decision. We should put it in front of the voters. Do you like this concept? Yes or no? And I would like to see them approve term limits. I think that's a no-brainer. I think they'll vote that in for sure, because that's kind of a California thing.
If I may.
Yeah.
The reason I said that I don't have a pony in this race is that I was thinking of, at least in terms of the prior statutes, any increase that was voted for council did not go into effect until there was a new council.
Now, that's what we did in the past, correct?
That's what we did in the past. So frankly, I would not be supportive of voting myself an increase So that was where
I
was
feel
coming
uncomfortable
from.
with that too,
Yeah.
with the possible exception of that $300 one. I think I don't think there'd be a lot of complaints about that.
That's kind of a catch-up. And for anyone who may be listening, we had 2 vacancies on city council recently because the terms had matured or expired. We had nobody in the community except the current council members who applied. So we didn't even have an election because there was nobody else stepping up saying, you know, I'm interested in this. And I think that regardless of who the council members are at any one time, there ought to be other people in the community willing to serve. And what we've been talking about for some years now is how do we get them interested enough? They're interested, but they haven't put in the application. They haven't made the move, and we've talked about, well, why not? So I would certainly be supportive of putting it on the ballot, recognizing that it's only something like $2,500. I thought it was going to cost more than that. And whether it's 500 or 950.
Hold your thought for a second on that. So is it 2,500 per item on the ballot? Or if we give them a set, it's just 2,500 for all the items?
I need to check on
that
that.
out.
Yeah.
And I would separate the salary increase from the term limit because
That's my intent too.
yeah, I am, you've heard me say I'm not in favor of the term limit because I do think that there's value in having somebody, the rest of you may disagree with me.
No, I'm worried about entrenched incumbency, that where people do have the mindset that I'm here to stay here, and that's sort of my side hustle, $950 a month forever. And if there's a term limit, then that ends it. I mean, that's my thought there, and even possibly go to one term, but.
From my perspective, it takes a good year and a half or 2 years for a new council member to figure out what's going on and feel comfortable. So I think at least 2 terms. There are a lot of people who don't want to serve for more than 2 terms for any number of reasons, more than the salary. But
I don't think the public understands the somewhat chaotic nature of an informal volunteer-oriented position like this. And it happens in, I think, any volunteer position where the out of the blue, we need to meet now type of situation occurs way more than you thought you thought it did when you entered into that volunteer position. It doesn't matter if it's something like the ice rink or here in city council or some of these committee positions. It just ends up being more work than you thought. You thought it was going to be easy, not too distracting. It ends up being still somewhat easy, but very distracting and way more time consuming. So, but yeah.
So one possibility in terms of, since we're just talking about fair remuneration, whatever that may be, whether it's $950 a month, or perhaps we can put a measure to the voters of saying, would you support A, $950 a month, B, $750 a month, C, $550 a month, and let the voters act on that, or maybe just a couple of choices.
A motion to increase immediately, effective at the next, well, I don't know, maybe effective in 2024, the $300 per month for council members, and to direct staff to bring back to council some items that we can put on the ballot how much it would cost per item, and how we want the ballot to be stated for the term limit and for the additional increase.
Okay, so before, a second on that concept, I can already do the numbers on how much it's going to cost. If you went to the 950, it's about $8,400 a year per increase, $8,400 a year per council member. It's about $42,000 a year, and that's well under 1% of our, whether you're looking at the revenue side or the current expense side of our budget. We're over $6 million, so 1% is $60,000. This is $42,000 increase. So it's, again, not a budget buster by any means. It's really more of an argument about volunteerism versus professionalism. Go ahead.
Point of order on the motion. The term limit is not something that is on tonight's agenda, so I think that portion of the motion should be withdrawn, deleted from your motion.
Speaking to the city attorney, to impose term limits, that needs to go to the voters?
But it's not on tonight's agenda.
No, it's not, but it needs to go to the voters.
Okay, so hold on a second. Would the council member like to refine the motion?
Sure.
Maybe, and so you kind of had two things going there. You had the $300 increase, so that's going to require some code changes, so you're really giving more direction to staff, I think. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, and I can break it up too. Okay. Let's break it up into two. Number one is move to approve an immediate increase to our council members from $220 per month to $300 per month, based on 5% annum
Okay,
increase.
so let's stop there. So you're giving council direction to come back with
We just moved to do it, and then it would just happen.
Can we do that with what we have? I don't think so. It's what?
Okay, so directing staff
An
to come
ordinance.
back with an ordinance.
Okay, so that's direction. Do we have a second on that direction?
I'll second that because the $300 a month represents the 5% per annum increase over the prior years, bringing the $220 a month up to $300 a month, if I understand correctly.
So, okay.
Is that the intent?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's.
I'll second that.
You second that. I don't know if this is, do we do an actual vote on this? Yeah. Okay. So all those in favor of that motion to direct staff to come back with an ordinance to increase council compensation to $300, say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed?
Opposed.
Does the clerk have the vote? Very good. All right, so with that said, would the council member like to move again?
I would also like to make a motion to direct staff to come back to council with potential ballot measure for increasing council pay to $950 per month.
Would you be willing to amend that to provide the voters with an alternative of, say, $950, $750, or no increase?
I'm in favor of what Mayor Stackfleth was suggesting, so.
Just as an interjection, I'm not sure if that's appropriate for ballot measures, that multiple choice thing.
It needs to be a yes or no.
A yes or no, right? Yeah, so it's $950 or not. Yeah. Are you going to second?
I will second that.
All right. So would you like any other items such as workload increase put in that, or will that be a separate item?
Yeah, if the staff while doing the direction can come back with the stipulation of workload increase, then we can
Or specificity?
specify that at the next meeting.
And would that be put on the March ballot?
Okay, that's too late for that.
Or would it be on the November ballot?
That's a non-issue. It's too late for anything in March, so it's
Okay.
definitely, it's the general election in November.
Good.
Yeah. All right, so we have a motion to come back with you're giving staff to come back with material of an agenda item regarding a ballot measure to be put on the November ballot, November election, November 4th, I think it is, regarding a pay increase to $9.50 with other additional items regarding council duties, council member duties. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Does the clerk have the vote? Okay.
In regards to the term limits, when I was mayor, we had already had that as a future agenda item, so may I just request that that gets back on the agenda so we can handle that at a different time?
And how, and you
Is it
don't
on
want-
there?
Okay, it's already on there,
Oh,
right?
thank you.
All
Okay,
right.
we'll talk about that at agenda 13.
Yeah. So I'm going to close agenda item number 8 at this point. Any additional comments? All right, let's move on to agenda item 9. I'm going to get this started. I have to go take care of something here briefly, so I'll let it continue on, but I'll be right back. So, number 9, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of ordinance number CCO-23, the number to be determined, amending municipal code section 10.44.070D. This is regarding Mount McLeod Avenue, and Chief Gibson will open up the conversation on this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In the November 2022 council meeting, I brought forth a recommendation to have no parking on either side of McLeod Avenue due to the narrowness of the roadway. At that time, council directed staff to find out other alternatives to include whether we could do one-sided parking, expanding the roadway, or having bike lanes and some other options. It took a little while, but staff was able to determine that there was a 50-foot roadway right-of-way that the city holds for the area of Mount Shasta or McLeod Avenue. And there are currently plans being developed now to look for funding to widen the roadway width to 40 feet, which would allow parking on both sides of the roadway and bicycle lanes as part of our active transportation plan. Currently, the roadway width, just to remind council, is 31 feet to 32 feet. That is what we have on the roadway for parking. The issue is that the lack of roadway width still remains. Even it's going to take a substantial amount of money to move the infrastructure, the trees, the sidewalks, and so that's going to take time. In the meantime, we still have the lack of sufficient roadway. This is the major evacuation route for 5 different zones from Zone Haven, which in the nighttime has a little over 1,600 people to evacuate and nearly 800 vehicles and over 800 houses and structures to protect should there be an emergency. Based on the roadway layout, the width, I recommend that parking be allowed on one side of the roadway only. This would be on the north side of the westbound lanes or the downhill lane. It would be the parking on the downhill lane coming down the hill. The reason for that is twofold. One, there's already a wider parking area at the bottom of McLeod Avenue that has we're down by the Sportsman's Den where the roadway's been widened. And because of the offset that is at the top of Mount Shasta Boulevard with the offset from McLeod where it's coming down and the intersection with Washington Drive that's offset. With the parking, it would be an 8-foot parking lane with a 12-foot roadway lane. So the reason we're doing it on the one side is because we're going to have to move the center line to allow for that wider parking so people are not driving across the center line, so people are not parking on the sidewalks and making pedestrians walk out into the roadway. We would also, this would give us right at 32 feet. The other thing we looked at was to have the 2 bicycle lanes and no parking. However, council was pretty adamant that they would like to see some parking on the roadway, and so this meets both our needs to get a wider roadway, to get emergency vehicles in and out, and to allow parking on that roadway. We would also leave the existing no truck parking, no trailers, motorhomes on both sides that is currently there. So essentially, we would be allowing our 8-foot plus wide fire trucks to be able to traverse that while getting out a lot of people. I recommend that we go accept the changes that I put for no parking on the, it would be no parking on the south roadway side of the east roadway, or the uphill side from McLeod, from Washington to Boulevard.
Stay with the program and start with clarifying questions from council members. Mr. Stearns.
So one of the ongoing issues with McLeod is the speed. Has staff considered the possibility of 11-foot width lanes instead of the 12, which might somehow reduce the speed?
The reason they're 12 is because that's how the math worked out. You could give it one side. There is a plan. I have the radar signs are in, so these are actual speed signs under signs that will flash red and radar everybody coming downhill, and there's a plan to have that on the southbound, or coming westbound, about mid-block between, somewhere between B Street and right there, for traffic coming downhill. That's the bigger speeding issue on McLeod, is the downhill traffic. So if we have the parking on that side, with that, we can help slow down the traffic on that side and, to mitigate some without having to sacrifice for the safety.
So, I mean, I'm generally supportive of this. I just wondered about the 11-foot versus 12-foot, if that would make a difference or not.
It's, with the way the math works out with the parking is if they're 11-foot, it's going to be a 12-foot roadway just because of how we got 32 feet. So actually, at one point of it, it's only going to be 11-foot 7-inch on one, just because we don't have the 32 full feet at the top of the thing. So it's actually going to be smaller and narrower at the top. We could put a stripe. I mean, you could put a stripe there to make it 11-foot, but it's really, I don't think it's going to have any impact from what we have distance-wise, sir.
If I can add to this. So AASHTO, under certain circumstances, American Association of State and Highway Transportation Officials, puts out these handbooks every year, updates them. Under certain circumstances, they will allow you to go to 11 feet. Typically, those are in areas where they're neighborhood routes, are very slow, very low volume. The problem is when we have emergency vehicles coming through, when you have 11-foot lanes, it's very hard for you to see where that lane marker is because of that width of that vehicle and the height that you are in that vehicle. So in my experience, and the general rule of thumb is if you're trying to get an emergency vehicles through a particular street, you don't go, I mean, for emergency vehicles, 12-foot will work, but it's still tight, but 11 feet is a rough one.
Okay, and a follow-up question, if I may? Yeah. If I understand correctly, then this proposed ordinance amendment has the support of the police, the fire, the engineer, and the city manager. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
All right, so I don't have any questions either, neither do Ms. Councilmember Collins or Clore, so we'll move on to public comments, starting with those in-house. Name and city, please.
Jackson Bowles, Mount Shasta. Last winter, I worked as a hydrographic surveyor all over Missouri and the eastern United States. I was on the roadways plenty. Of most of Missouri, the travelway is 9 feet from center line to the fog line, which is quite narrow. We had about 12 feet from center line to the guardrail to work with, which granted was not legal to be working with, but downhill parking and uphill parking on McLeod Avenue would be, I'm gonna apologize, my public speaking is not great. I have a lot of concussions. Downhill versus uphill parking on McLeod Avenue would be worth looking into, because uphill parkers, they're already parking half their vehicle up on the curb, and they're trying to stay out of the way. Uphill traffic has more control than downhill control, so in the wintertime, when things start to get icy, if you have a bunch of people parking on the north side of McLeod Avenue, downhill traffic could lose control and smash into all the cars parked on the north side of the street, whereas the south side of the street, traffic would be slower, and the people on the south side of the street are already parked up on the curb away from the traffic. And the intersection of Washington and McLeod is very dangerous when traffic is coming from the north side of that intersection. It's very common for vehicles to slide out into the intersection, and because McLeod Avenue does not have a stop sign on that, it's a two-way stop. So people coming up and down the hill, no stop. People coming across the hill do have a stop. People trying to stop coming down off that hill on Washington usually slide out into the intersection and get into an accident. Last year, there was a pretty good accident where a learner driver was coming out across Washington, and they didn't know that Washington was a through street with no stops. So they got nailed in the side of the car, and it was an absolute mess. So maybe some stop signs or something would be in order for that intersection.
So you're complete? I just wanted to comment that we have, talking about Washington, we have a survey already ongoing regarding Washington. Right? Yeah, so apparently we are familiar with the problems with Washington too. So you're in favor of our changes on just curious, on McLeod?
For the parking,
yeah,
it would not be wise, in my opinion, to have people park on the north side of McLeod, because that is downhill traffic, it is faster traffic, and in the wintertime, when it starts to get icy, there will be less control over the vehicles.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in house would like to speak? Okay. Name and city, please.
Cynthia Sake-Miller, Mount Shasta. Yeah, as a front row recipient to the the excitement on that road, I fully agree with Jackson as far as the iciness of that road. If you have all those cars lined up on the north side, we had a school bus actually tried to turn that corner from Washington, go up the street, lost their bearings, started sliding down that street, a full school bus, backwards. It was devastating. And I'm just saying the minor difference, I do think that two sides is too congested to have parking. We don't have very much parking on the north side as it is. The majority of residents that need parking are on the left or on the south side already. And again, they park on the curb, 50-50, we all do. And as far as just visualization, getting in and out and watching those, so many construction vehicles going up and down that street at high speed, and the giant semi trucks that go up and down that road, and they have no consideration for the speed. I'm agreeing with Jackson, that downhill speed, having lack of visualization on the north side, I think is a big mistake. I think having no parking, if I were to encourage anything, it would be to have no parking on the north side.
Thank you. All right, we have 3 of 3 speakers here in-house.
David Ream, Mount Shasta. Quoting the agenda packet, the problem is the lack of, quote, ingress and egress for emergency vehicles, end quote, on McLeod Avenue. To first read the word sidewalk on this agenda item, you must continue to the actual 4th whereas in the proposed ordinance. There is an implied reference initially with the word emergency. This word indicating a living person with an emergency problem that requires official assistance. Now, since all persons are not necessarily a driver or passenger. The third option would be a pedestrian. Follow me along this mental path to arrive at another implied construct, a sidewalk. Contact between pedestrians and vehicles usually end up with much more damage to the pedestrian than to the vehicle, thus requiring emergency service. In the fourth whereas, it is stated, quote, that the parking of vehicles on the sidewalk is not an option and causes further damage to the public, end quote. Herein lies the current situation with danger for the pedestrians on a number of streets in Mount Shasta. On Berry Street between High and Forest Street, for many years, 3 residences continuously park on their sidewalk. On McLeod Avenue, exactly in the above-mentioned area, the most vehicles in all of town for many years park on their sidewalk. Perhaps this particular disrespect for the safety of pedestrians is contagious. For only last winter, I sadly witnessed the disease has spread to my block of Chestnut Street, where I live at 330 Chestnut, and my neighbor's home and business, the Dream Inn, at 326 Chestnut Street. I spoke of this exact arrangement of parked vehicles first to the Mount Shasta Police Dispatcher and later to this City Council. Zero action was the response. Lastly, I also heard point blank this year during previous City Council meetings that parking restrictions and signage are flat out not enforced. I will end with asking those in this room as well as the city at large to remedy this sad and dangerous situation.
Thank you, Mr. Ream. All right, so we have run out of people in-house. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
We don't have any hands raised.
All right, so we'll close public comment regarding item number 9 and bring it back to council, possibly staff. Chief, did you want to say something? No? All right. Go ahead.
Chief, I certainly understand the downhill, uphill situation that was pointed out by the gentleman that spoke to us, and it's pretty standard assumption that that is the case. Is there some reason you wanted the parking on the side that you show it versus the parking on the uphill side?
Yes, there were several issues that were brought up both through the engineer and through Public Works Director. The one issue, again, is how the intersection with Washington and McLeod aligns. Right. We would be asking people to have to make a huge turn.
A zigzag.
And cut off. They would actually have to cut that corner even more than they do now. Right. Which would put more hazard to the vehicles that go past the line. Right. Right. Now they've got a little more room where they can go out around that a little farther. It's a little safer at that intersection, whereas it's easier for the uphill traffic who is going slower to navigate that turn. The second thing is having parking on the downhill side. That has a tendency with the parking to slow down the traffic coming down to help mitigate some of the speed issues. The third issue is on the downhill side, there's less tendency to park, and I have found less vehicles parking on the actual sidewalk as they are on the uphill side, as was mentioned by a couple of speakers. That was one of the issues, is because of the width, they're parking on the sidewalk and pedestrians are walking out on the roadway. That we can't have that. And then finally, at the bottom of the McLeod Avenue, the roadway width goes out to a 50-foot where there's an actual parking lane, and our lanes are actually wide down at the bottom. So essentially, it was we make safer the intersection at the top, safer reduction in speed, no parking on the sidewalks, and we keep the parking that's already designed to be down there at the bottom.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilmember Stearns?
Yes, thanks. Can you address the issue of sidewalks on the north side, south side? I think we had a comment by David.
So there are issues where there are sidewalk, or what they call the curb, that's actually the pedestrian walkway path that is up there. And if you've ever driven up McLeod Avenue, you will see that they park on where the sidewalk is supposed to be because the roadways are too narrow there. And so one of the complaints that started this, along with the narrowness, was that pedestrians were being forced in the roadway because of that. Coming down the roadway with moving it, I don't see a lot of vehicles that are actually parking on the sidewalk or over at the curbs there versus the uphill.
So is this proposed modification, this proposed amendments to section 10.44.070, in your opinion, will it promote pedestrian safety?
Yes, by restricting any parking on that south side, it would prevent anybody from parking on the sidewalks and promote safety.
And next, we're not really talking about traffic circle and traffic calming measures, whether it's at Washington and McLeod or perhaps at McLeod and Adams. But is that something that the city has considered and rejected, or is it something that the city is still considering?
Well, I can speak to my conversations with Ken Kellogg, our Public Works Director, and he is looking right now, and he's got several designs at pace for different types of roadway expansions, if you will, so that we can have safe pedestrian travel, safe parking on both sides of the roadway, bicycle lanes on both sides of the roadway to get in with our active transportation plan. And I know that there's a survey of Washington. I'm not sure what's involved in that. I can let Todd speak to that. But we're looking at ways to find funding and how to engineer the roadway so that we can make it safe and accessible for everybody. But that's a long-term goal, but they are actively looking into those.
Okay, so it's long and convoluted. We've had a couple surveyors out there. Some original documents said that the right-of-way out there should actually be 50 feet. We tracked down as many documents as we can, and it appears that the right number is 40 feet. What we're trying to do is capture that additional right-of-way that is the city's, and through grant money, because it's still a construction project, to capture that extra roadway, which isn't really enough for another, for parking on that side, but it does accomplish the goals of the active transportation plan, which is to have bike lanes on either side of that roadway and parking on the north side.
And then I believe you wanted to know about the engineering of Washington, if that's going to include a roundabout or any type of safety plan there.
Roundabout, I have not had a conversation with Seth Petrie, who is the engineer of record with PACE that's working on this. I don't think a roundabout is appropriate given the amount of land you need to meet the geometries of that roundabout. There would be a lot of right-of-way takings to make that happen.
Well, I wonder about I know we've talked about roundabouts in the past, and you're thinking that it has to be larger, but I've seen some roundabouts recently. I can't remember if it was up in Seattle or elsewhere, where the roundabouts were maybe 12 feet wide. The center was only about 12 feet. It was surprising how small it was. So I just wondered if that was maybe still a possibility in terms of traffic calming.
Well, so there are two issues. When I look at that area, they're as small as I've seen a roundabout. There isn't quite enough space there without significant right-of-way takings. The other thing is when you're talking about a roundabout, they're wonderful, and the real purpose of a roundabout is so that you don't have to stop. And so it processes a lot more traffic. And usually a roundabout is used in an area where there's a significant amount of traffic that you want to process over an hour time period. And we don't have that there. There are areas in town that I think roundabouts may be a good idea, but that...
I understood the collision or near collision, whichever it was the result of this having to stop and not being able to stop, whereas the roundabout is a way of preventing that situation.
But if, with a roundabout, if you've lost traction and there would normally be a stop sign there, what you'll do is if you've lost that traction, you're going to end up in the middle of that roundabout. You know, so you're not able to turn. I mean, if you can't stop at the stop sign, you're not going to be able to make it around that roundabout. You're going to end up on the center. So that's not going to solve the problem there. I think roundabouts are great in the right place. I just think that the expense and the purpose of the roundabout there is kind of lost because we don't have the volume. A change in geometry to the roadway is something that makes more sense, and that's something we can have PACE look at. It could be clarifying the intersection, so you know you're full T. But yeah, I mean, there are better ways to you know, the inappropriate. I guess to skin a cat is not a roundabout. It's potentially a geometric change. Maybe we can chase that money down as part of the McLeod project when we're trying to capture that additional right-of-way to look at ways we can clarify the intersection at Washington.
All right, thanks.
All right, so Councilmember Clore doesn't have any more input. Before we go to a motion on this, there seemed to be some concern about enforcement, I think there was outright some concern about enforcement of the parking laws on McLeod. So, Chief, what are your thoughts on that?
Let me clarify that. So let's put it back into context of what we were discussing. We were discussing the enforcement of 2-hour parking in the downtown district.
I think it's parking on the sidewalk.
Yeah, so...
the concern is that despite any changes we make, there'll be people parking on the sidewalk.
No,
so,
if we make changes and we make this a no parking on that side of the road, there's no parking on that side of the road. If you're parking on the sidewalk, you'll be cited for violation of the California Vehicle Code for parking on a sidewalk or illegal parking. We actively enforce the no parking zones. We actively enforce the red zones. We actively enforce no parking in the handicap zones for people who don't have the handicap placards. So to put it in context of what was referred to here tonight, yes, we said that we weren't enforcing 2-hour parking in the downtown business district, but we fully enforce the parking codes on a regular basis.
with that clarified, I think it's time for a motion on this. This is a technical item, and it's been worked on for about 6 months? About a year, okay.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like we rushed, staff did not rush with this plan, and so I think they've done their due diligence and come up with a plan that I trust is an improvement and will make McLeod Avenue a safer and better street for all those involved. So with that said, I'd like to entertain a motion from someone. If you need help with the wording, go to your outline and recommend the council action has the wording for you, if that would be helpful.
Well, I'm not looking at the recommended wording, so I may screw up, but I'll move that we pass the, basically approve a first reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta, amending section 10.44.070 of the Mount Shasta Municipal Code, and move it to a second reading by title only.
Second.
Thank you both. All those in favor say aye.
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 And aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. We move on to item number 10, proposed funding for the Colliers Interpretive and Information Center. For those in the audience here or online, that is the Visitor Center on I-5, I don't know, 10 miles north of Wairika. It's a great little center, and I put this item forth, and Todd, our city manager, is going to give us the background on it.
So the Collier Interpretive Center is JPA, Joint Powers Authority, of 9 cities in the county, established in 1998. They are open 5 days a week with the express purpose of having people stop, generally coming southbound over the Oregon border to get information about the county and the cities of Siskiyou County for the express purpose of getting people to stop and to spend money and to support economic development. And Councilperson Stackfleth is part of the board, and to keep operating, they need funding. They do a lot with a very shoestring budget.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And so the request is for $1,000, and I've been told that in the past we did donate to them. I'm not sure if that's accurate. Maybe not in the time I've been on staff, I've been on council, but I think the people at the center said that we had in the past. So the request is for $1,000. Are there any clarifying questions on this potential donation? Council members?
No, I don't think so, but you might indicate also that the Collier Interpretive Center does have areas where businesses from Mount Shasta can advertise their businesses, services, activities.
Okay, so I will clarify what the Collier Interpretive and Information Center is about. So it's a two-part center, really. There's an interpretive aspect to it, meaning that there's the ability to learn about our local area, whether it's geology, Native American tribal history, geology, flora and fauna. There's a path, there's a trail there that's going to have signage. The improvement is going to be signage added about what you're seeing, so it's an interpretive walk and so forth. That's the interpretive side. On the information side, you can go there like other visitor centers that you probably, people in the audience, and people here on council and staff, you go to a visitor center, and there's all kinds of brochures that you can pick up. And that's the other half of this center. So 2 functions, and they do it very well, and it is a small agency with respect to numbers. I'll give you those in a second. But let's move on to public comment regarding our $1,000 donation request. Is anyone inside wanting to speak on this? No? Anyone on Zoom wanting to speak on this? All right. I'm going to take the lead here on the council conversation. So I am a member of the board. I happen to be the vice president, much to my, whatever. I'm happy with it. Okay. So they have a great balance sheet. On the liability side, they have all of $200 there. Yeah. I wish I only had $200 worth of liabilities in my life, and I'm sure Muriel wished the city only had $200 worth of liabilities. So their total equity is $300,000. So it's a healthy organization with respect to their balance sheet, and they're operating with positive income year to date, somewhere I believe it was something like $7,000. So we wouldn't be donating to an agency that's failing financially. It's healthy. So I feel secure about that. They have recently been trying to upgrade some of their things. They do things like produce this bag. If you don't know, if you go to a visitor center, there's usually a bag you can pick up to put all your brochures in. So they completed that task. That would be the staff there. So there's staff. And they came up with these brochures, these trifold brochures, which I'm going to give to our visitor center here in Mount Shasta to promote them. And, oh yeah, and there's this little token that you can pick up there when you go visit, this little wooden token. For some reason, this is their traditional type of thing that they've had there. And, and then we've been working on maps and other signage regarding interpretive-oriented things, and all that's really coming to fruition of late. And I would think, based on what I can tell, once they get these maps finished, we'll be finished with all these projects that started about a year ago. So happy to report projects were started, projects are finishing, and then it's a matter of maintaining what we have. So thus the $1,000 request that I put forth
You mentioned
on their
maps.
behalf.
What type of maps?
The maps are of the local area of the Siskiyou County, and they're posting maps of the scenic highways and byways, maps of Mount Shasta trails, not Mount Shasta, but Siskiyou trails, bike paths, similar to what was discussed regarding our bike path trails locally. Remember when, for our plaque down there by police department? So it's oriented towards hiking and biking trails. That's being worked on. And then all the signage for the interpretive walk. So these are nearing completion. We sort of proofed those, and those should be available for the public at the center soon. The maps for the bikes and biking and hiking trails. That's countywide. So it's much more county-oriented as far as that goes.
To the chair?
Yeah.
Just to be clear that for everyone that's listening, you are on the board as a representative of the city.
Correct. So the Collier Interpretive and Information Center is a joint powers agency or authority, and each city is supposed to have one, if not two, alternative, if necessary, represented on the board. There's a couple vacancy. I think Dunsmuir doesn't have one. I'm not sure about McLeod in South County. Weed does. He shows up fairly regularly. And, right, so the board is upwards of 15 potential members, and the staff is about 4. There's a treasurer, there's an executive director, and there's a couple of helpers, so to speak. And then there's one major employee that works Monday through Friday. My one concern, if maybe slight complaint, is that they're not open on weekends. And I think their volume, their traffic, their visitor volume would go way up if we could somehow manage to actually hire someone to work on the weekends for, 6 to 8 hours. So, yeah, I'm pretty positive it's closed on Saturday and Sunday, which kind of needs to be open. But we'll be getting into that next year at my lead. I've been pretty quiet as of now, but
I just want everyone to know that you bringing this to the council is not a conflict of interest. It is an extension of the city, so that everyone's clear on that.
meaning that we're part of the Joint Powers Authority.
Correct.
Yeah, there's no conflict of interest. I don't think at all.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Someone would like to?
Question.
Yeah.
So you have proposed that as the city representative to Collier, that the city contribute $1,000 towards this JPA.
Yep.
And do you have some idea of how the $1,000 would be utilized if this motion were to pass, or if the
I think all their donations, whether it's from Wairika or other cities, or donations that come directly, are generally put in their general fund and used for general fund expenses. There's really been no discussion. Well, Larry, maybe I think there was one contribution where someone donated to have some signage done, but in this case, it would be going towards the general fund.
And is it correct to say that much of the staffing at the Collier Interpretive Center is by volunteers.
Yeah, I think they have one paid employee and the rest, 2 or 3 volunteer. Yeah, but it's, I'm not going to editorialize right now, but I think they need to look at possibly expanding paid staff to cover Saturday and Sunday. That's going to be my main thrust
I don't
next year.
I don't have any other questions at this point. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I'd like to make a motion
Thank you.
that we propose $1,000 of funding annually for the Collier Interpretive and Information Center.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you, folks. We'll move on to number 11, setting a date and time for a city council goal-setting workshop. I guess I will be the presenter on this. In the past 2 years, I believe, past 2 Januaries, we had a goal-setting meeting. I believe it was January 22, or no? We only had one of these?
No, we've had two, and they've been in January.
Yeah. So it'd be the third one. I'm really only, first, is there agreement that it'd be good to have a third one? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. All right. And my best date is Wednesday, mid to late afternoon. So thoughts on availability for January?
And Tessa, I don't know about your schedule, but I will actually be starting to do a consulting contract, so I'm going to be working full-time.
Starting?
It looks like the middle of January, so any time in the first half.
4th or 11th? You're still not employed? Okay. How about you, Tessa?
I could do, Wednesday would be the,
4th or 11th?
no, I think it's the 3rd or the 10th, right?
Oh, yeah, I think I'm on the wrong year. You're right.
I'm not available for any more items on 3rd. That's a
3rd and 10th, yeah.
all-day deposition of one of my clients.
So how about the 10th?
I can do the 10th at 3 on, or
Okay.
morning.
Let's take a look at the 10th. I see the 10th as being a Tuesday.
No, could change your year, go to 24th. I had that, that's why I misspoke before. I was on 22 or something.
Here we go. January 10, Wednesday. I would be available, when are you thinking, in the afternoon
3 o'clock.
of the?
Yeah,
Huh?
3 o'clock on the 10th.
That would work for me.
All right, so that's going to be the date. No need for motions or anything, correct, staff? All right, I'll get in touch with John Redmond. His Wednesdays are kind of okay at 3 o'clock, I believe. He starts getting really busy at around 4 to 5, so I think he should be okay. I'll find out. A lot of the items that we talked about in the past are actually either completed or currently underway, so we can get updates on those things, maybe get some clarifications. It's a good time to bring up new items if you have anything of interest, right?
And would this be at City Hall?
On top of PD. Okay, so the location, the venue will be the conference room above Police Department, 3 o'clock, January 10th. So be prepared to review and add and clarify
And I think
council goals.
you mentioned something that would be helpful to probably all of us, and that is a summary or update of what has already been accomplished in
So
terms of the...
Todd, I'm going to try and get together with you and go over all of that. Yep. And so that, for a matter of time.
If we can get that in advance
Okay,
of the
kind of get an
meeting.
agenda in advance?
Huh?
Get an agenda and, yeah.
I think I have I took a picture of last year's, everything that we jotted down, so
Right.
I can redistribute that.
And I've got that too.
And you have that in your
It's on my wall.
office, yeah.
So in advance of the meeting, we send out quasi-agenda saying, okay, old business, current business, new business type of thing, but the new business being more open to ideas you have going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
And Todd, I'd like to meet with you. I haven't got a date in mind, but I'll get in touch with you. It's really to discuss what's been completed or is close to completion, that type of thing. I don't think we should dwell a lot on items that are done. In other words, if the sewage treatment plant is completed or nearly completed, there's not a lot to talk about. New potential sewer issues, we can talk about that. All right, at length. So let's move on. Item number 12, reports.
Mayor, if I may, you still need to take public comment on that item.
Oh, we do. Anybody inside that would like to comment on our city council goals meeting? It's
Super exciting.
And is anyone online who'd like to comment? So we have opened, and now I am closing public comment regarding this item. I didn't think we needed to do this for that one. For the public's sake, is that meeting open to the public? The one on 10th?
Yes, it will be open to the public, and I did have a late hand raised. I see your hands down now, but the hand that was raised was Rosalind McCoy.
Rosalind, if you'd like to join us and comment on our goals meeting, feel free.
You answered my question. I was just wondering if it was open to the public.
It is, so feel free to join us. That'll be, it'll be posted as a normal Brown Acting meeting, and feel free to join us. Don't think it'll be online though, right?
It will be posted online.
No, the actual
It won't
meeting.
be live streamed.
So if you want to actually see the meeting, you'll have to come to the conference room on top of the police department on that day. It will not have a Zoom service. Thank you, Rosalind. All right, so we're going to close that item, go to number 12. I was going to report on the Collier Interpretive Center, but I think I've spoken enough on that. Anyone else want to interject? Meetings? Okay, let's move on to future agenda items. I'll zip through these really quickly. Special meeting to appoint planning commissioners, that's coming up on the 22nd. Remember, okay, so the city, Todd addressed this one, certainly going to keep that going. Term limits, I think there's more urgency now regarding that. We certainly have to get that on. We have to approve that going to the ballot by the end of June. It's 4 months out. So the election's in November, so yeah. So sort of a due date on that one. Active Transportation Committee, I don't know what to say on that. Todd, Tim, is this Todd or Tim, is this an interest of yours, right?
Yeah, I put it on the agenda some months ago to find out if the city council wants to keep the Active Transportation Committee or not. And if it does, then what the activities of the Active Transportation
Let's keep it
Committee
on
would be.
there, because there might be a good one in light of what's going on with our ad hoc committee regarding one-way streets and potential bike lanes. So, yeah, definitely keep that going. Washington Avenue survey, we talked about that. Definitely want to keep that there. Parklet ordinance, Todd mentioned to me he's working on that, so we'll see what comes of it. Housing element, will that be coming to us in the next month or two, or?
In January.
January, nice, okay. Wildfire prevention messaging, yeah, let's keep that, and do we need to enhance it with what Francis Mangels brought up about tree issues? Thoughts from staff? Do we want to expand that item? And do you want to
Well, I mean, we got
Are his concern, I mean, I think they are legitimate.
No, they are.
Yeah.
The problem is there is so much fuel out there to remove. I mean, remember that we got the grant for the skid steer and the masticator head, so that will allow us to expand our capabilities. And I'm sure once we, get in towards spring, we'll probably go out and seek some additional help in the form of, consultants, just so we can expand our bandwidth. I mean, those are all valid. It depends on where, junipers and other, white oaks and things are. But it's something that we're keeping an eye on, and it's something that the fire department is active in. We just need to up our game, especially as we, get through, the wet months to get into spring.
So in the spring, in the past, we did have an opportunity to bring material to the Roseburg property, the landing. Oh, we might do that again.
Yeah, that would be the plan. And in the past, when we've gone out for consultants, it's been for, a crew with a skid steer and a masticator head, and the fact that we have our own now, if we were also to ask for the same type of consultants also with their own skid steer and masticator head, we can double the amount of fuel that we can remove.
And in terms of the juniper that was mentioned, I mean, I don't know where the junipers are located, but is there?
I don't either, and it depends on where it is. If it's part of an area where we're removing fuels, I think that would go more quickly than whatever else is there. I mean, there are areas that on private property where people plant, plants that aren't appropriate for the area, especially as we're drying out, and there's not much we can do there other than to just provide notice that, hey, you might want to think about removing this, but.
So bottom line, stays on the agenda, might be expanded and be discussed.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish up
spring?
the agenda items and then go to new ones. I think the issue is whether we need to have a more aggressive, proactive fuels reduction, power line hazard mitigation program with our public works or contractors to address what Francis Mangels is talking about.
Yep.
And so I'll bring that up at the end here. All right. So we're going to keep up the messaging. Stormwater, I wanted to get together with you on some of the details regarding the 218 process for the drainage. That's later on.
So there's an interesting tidbit on that. The law in its arcane, John was under the impression that it had to be part of a 218 process, go to the ballot, and would require 2/3 of a vote. Raftelli's...
it's 50+1 for that.
Right. Well, Raftelli's believes it's 2/3, and John is saying, no, it's 50+1. But Raftelli's is also saying that depending on how we categorize this, and this is something that John is looking into, is this doesn't necessarily, and again, this is all up to interpretation from John, is in their work in California, Raftelli's work, on this similar type of assessment, they've gone out to just a mail ballot for 50+1.
Yeah, you do go to the ratepayers in this case, yeah.
So we're trying to figure that out right now.
Okay.
All right.
You'll get back to us on that?
For the general public's benefit, when city manager refers to John, he's referring to
John Kenny,
the city attorney.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep, our city attorney.
Yeah, not me, not John Redmond, right?
Yep.
J, snow plowing operations, creation of a district. That's a very interesting one, so we're going to keep that there. And K, sidewalk snow removal fees in the downtown district. We'll definitely keep that on there. All right, moving on to 90-day camping ordinance. That's going to come down the line, right, Todd? Okay.
It is. That's all about the chief and an inventory of what we consider to be, critical sites.
All right. Extraction and exportation of water from Mount Shasta, that one's sort of been backburnered, but worth keeping on there. We've talked about it. All right, so new potential items. Chief, this high school police dedicated police officer, reserve officer at the high school. Is that something we should put on future agenda items, or you'll just bring it to us at appropriate time?
I really won't have anything to bring back until after the January meeting where they decide whether or not they want to pay for it. I mean, we're looking 60, 90 days out if you wanted to look at that.
You'll bring that to us versus us?
Yes, I will bring everything to you on that one.
Go ahead, Tim.
And it sounds like it would be appropriate to add to the near-term agenda the EIFD results from the county?
Yes.
So we'll call that an EIFD update, certainly for the first meeting in January. That things should be fairly clear. This is a big meeting tomorrow, actually, on that, from what I understand.
And are Mayor and Tessa going to that, or is
I
anyone-
might go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tessa?
No, not with that short notice. I couldn't make it.
I'm actually on vacation this week, so I might be able to squeeze that in.
Okay.
It's a morning meeting.
BOS starts at 9, but there's all the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll take a look at the timing on the agenda. Tree issues. So do we want to add to this long list of future agenda items?
To the chair?
Yeah.
I'd like to add an agenda item for the next meeting.
Okay.
To propose well, I don't want one for us. I do want one for our city manager. A 10% salary increase. I did a little homework on how he is comparing to our neighbors, and he's a little bit below to a lot below, like over 20 grand below currently.
Okay.
And that is what I'd like to bring up.
I'll second that. Bring it to us. Take a look at it.
Yeah, and that would be effective January 1st of next year.
Of 25 or 24?
Of 24.
So it'd be a little.
So it'll be a retro.
It'll be retro because we won't make a decision on it. Yeah. All right. So okay, there we go. So that one's a new agenda item. Tree issues being along with the lines of Francis Mangels. Do we want to make that an agenda item? I'm speaking to staff on that.
I didn't quite catch that.
So we have issues with trees possibly as a hazard regarding power lines. Do we want to make that an agenda item where we authorize or try to set up a program, be more proactive, possibly expend money we didn't expect to mitigate fire hazards due to fuels and fire hazards and other hazards related to overgrown trees?
Let's add it. My only concern is that under power lines, that all that property is not ours.
Right, but then the question will be, can we set up a program or code that's wherein we warn people that they have to actually take care of these things? It's sort of along the lines of the sidewalks. You're responsible for these sidewalks, you have to fix this. These trees are a hazard, and you need to.
Well, there's actually
unless they already exist, and we just need.
On Dunsmuir, I passed a hazardous vegetation ordinance that code enforcement and fire chief would pass out tickets if after one notice if fuels have not been removed from the properties.
To the chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one central question about this.
Yeah.
I have had Pacific Power come by twice and cut trees around the lines going around my house. Is there some place where it's not their responsibility to go do this and it's homeowners?
Around power lines itself, all of the, when you see the large swath that's usually kept somewhat mowed, that's all, the power company's property, and, they get that's all what the subject of all the lawsuits is, that they're not keeping those easements clear. I don't think the power companies, I think they'd be, tickled pink if we took care of them. But in terms of, individual properties, that's something we can take care of with an ordinance, but I'm not sure if that's, I'm answering your question.
Yeah, I'm just saying, they are on it, on the street I live on. They are clearing out trees, I mean, the last few years regularly.
Well, that's why they've been close to declaring bankruptcy, is the number of fires that have started because they have not kept trees trimmed, and they've fallen onto, electrical lines have fallen onto nearby trees.
Chief, who do you think is responsible for?
So the power company is responsible for clearing the right-of-way. You'll see them cutting the lines out. I think what Francis was talking about, though, is you've got these 150-foot trees that are back on the property that if they come down, they're going to come across. And I think that's where we get into the fire codes of you have to clear your trees up for such a height, take out any dead or snags, and that 100-foot clearance. So I think it'd be something that the fire chief could look at the fire codes and stuff. To see about clearing trees that may be hazards that are outside of that right-of-way of the power companies. Because if you know here, the tree up there on that hill, it's a 150-foot tree, could hit this building, and I think that's kind of what Francis is talking about, because the power company is real good about their right-of-ways. As he was saying, I've had them out at my house, and they come out for free, too, if you call them for a run. It's never cost me a thing.
So, if I may ask for a clarification, it's my understanding also that Pacific Power has an obligation to clear the right-of-way.
Yes.
And it has, or its easement, it has an obligation to maintain that easement properly. And what Francis is talking about then is trees that are outside of the easement that may, if they fell, affect the power.
That's what I was gathering from, I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but my understanding was he was talking about these big, tall firs and cedar trees that if they come down, they're going to take power lines, but the power company doesn't go clear 50 feet, 100 feet from their thing. They do, I believe it's 12 or something right around the poles.
And just so we're clear, they're clearing, I'm not talking about the 50-foot easement on the main power, the 110,000 volt line.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about 7,000 street lines.
Yes.
And that they're cutting heavy back.
Trees Incorporated is out, that's their contract, they're out cutting everything.
So I'm missing kind of what Francis and what we're actually talking about here.
So here's my understanding, so I'll use my house as an example. So where my house comes in, I have trees that have grown up into the power lines coming into the house. Power company came out with their contractor, cleared those trees. Other side, other person's property, nowhere near my power line, is a big dead tree. We had a storm. Down comes the limbs. They're landing on my thing from a different property. I think he's talking about the bigger trees that aren't being cleared that pose hazard to thing. That would be something I think the fire code could look into, is what is already in the fire code and what is already there. So I think it's something we can bring back to you and have a good explanation of what's our responsibility versus what's the power companies.
I'll bring Corey back at the next meeting. We'll have a conversation of what we're looking for, and I'll have him walk through what we can and what we can't do, and I'll have an idea. I mean, I can pull the ordinance from Dunsmuir and see how we can adjust it to ours if that's something that we want to do.
Francis has brought this up for many times, so I'm just taking someone's good advice to heart. Councilmember Clore has an item.
I would like to ask that we amend the previous future item and have our annual employee review for the city manager to coincide with a possible out-of-contract pay increase.
Correspond to be part of.
That happened before. And if that means that we have to push off the agenda item, then I think that that's probably what we need to do.
That's a closed door meeting,
session.
right? Yeah, closed door session. Okay. So, try and set that up for early January. All right. All right, so the only other thing is
May I ask a clarification?
Yeah.
So are we talking about having that at the same time as?
No, before having a employee review, basically, in advance.
Oh, of the next city council meeting, you're saying?
Maybe separate, or it would be just before it.
I'm saying if we can all make it happen before the next council meeting, then great. But if not, then if we do need to push it out, then the retro would just go back even more if we decide to increase the pay.
Okay.
Thank you, actually.
All right,
That's a good
so
idea.
expenditures for beautification and DEAC. The last time I checked, DEAC had $63,000 in reserve. I don't think they have that many projects worth that much, unless you do all the facade improvements at once. So I wanted that to be an agenda item where we potentially invite the leadership of those two committee either separately or maybe two separate agenda items where we review their finances and how their respective reserves match up against their potential project costs, and we essentially approve, I think we have already in advance, but actually sort of make these projects happen. Because I get regular complaints from members of those committees, particularly DEAC, that they don't either want to know how much money they have, or why is it taking so long for us to get the funding expended or given to us to do the things we've been talking about. And so I would like those to be agenda items, probably separate ones for each committee, where we review their fiscal status with an eye to available funds for their projects.
Well, one of the things that I think I hear you saying is that both DEAC and beautification ought to be having an annual budget and an annual budget request to the council.
I'm going to go a little, yes, and I'm going to go a little further than that. If the project, let's take the garbage cans, cost $25,000, and the amount of funds available is $63,000, and we approve that project to be completed, which is basically a purchase and placement type of thing, then it ought to happen within the framework that we put forward versus not really happening where they get 3, but they really wanted to get, I think it's beautification with the garbage cans, but it's incomplete. So is it a money issue, or is it that we're trying to make our overall general fund look better by not spending money that should be dedicated to certain things? If you get what I'm saying.
Well, DEAC.
In other words,
yeah.
so in other words, there's money dedicated to these projects. It's there, but we're not spending it because we want to make the overall general fund look good because these are general fund expenses. I don't know. It's bothering me to a certain
Beautification
extent.
Committee does not get any.
Isn't it a special fund? Is it a special separate fund? It's not part of the general fund,
It
right?
is not a special fund. It gets, all the money that Beautification Committee gets would be from the City Council's approval as part of the budget. DEAC, on the other hand, has a special fund that comes from the.
Well, the point is, Tim, these people think that the money's available. I think it is, especially in the case of DEAC, and the projects aren't being completed.
Okay. So I hear you'd like to have a review of that.
Yep.
And I'm fine with that.
Yep. Okay. No other discussion points? Without any opposition, I will close this meeting. Yes? Done. We are adjourned at 7:57. Thank you. Did you miss your meeting? Don't go. Is this? No. So.
How was your week?
That was a work week, so this was, work weeks are better. I got too much side hustle type stuff going on like this, so the to-do list is long and I get frustrated. Anyhow, so what did Jeffrey tell you?